Donald Trump wins.
I love this country.
And Hillary Clinton concedes.
This loss hurts.
Tonight, reaction to Trump's stunning, unexpected victory. How battleground states made the difference.
Church-going Catholics here in the battleground state of New Hampshire are weighing in on the presidential election. I'm Wyatt Goolsby. We'll have that reaction, plus the latest numbers in the tight Senate race.
Join us for special election coverage on EWTN News Nightly for Wednesday, November 9th, 2016.
I've spent my entire life in business looking at the untapped potential in projects and in people all over the world. That is now what I want to do for our country.
President-elect Donald Trump plays out his vision for the future of America. Good evening from Washington, D.C. Thanks for joining us. I'm Brian Patrick.
And I'm Lauren Ashburn reporting from our political desk. It's one of the greatest political upsets in the history of the U.S. Now, billionaire businessman and political outsider Donald Trump promises to be one president for one America. Trump, who has never served public office, came from behind, knocking down the political establishment. He won 279 electoral votes to Hillary Clinton's 228 and swept critical battleground states like Michigan, Pennsylvania, and North Carolina.
Now it's time for America to bind the wounds of division. Have to get together. To all Republicans and Democrats and independents across this nation, I say it is time for us to come together as one united people.
In her concession speech this morning, Hillary Clinton says America is, quote, more deeply divided than we thought. She urged her supporters to accept the outcome of the presidential election and keep working to make the country better.
This is painful, and it will be for a long time. But I want you to remember this. Our campaign was never about one person or even one election. It was about the country we love and about building an America that's hopeful, inclusive, and big-hearted.
Donald Trump has softened his criticism of Hillary Clinton. He congratulated her on a hard-fought campaign when she called him to congratulate him overnight.
Hillary has worked very long and very hard over a long period of time, and we owe her a major debt of gratitude for her service to our country. I mean that very sincerely.
And Brian, Donald Trump is going to be working with the president. He'll be at the White House on his transition.
And of course, today, President Obama says he is heartened by Trump's call for unity. Comparing the election to an intramural scrimmage, the president says we're actually all on one team.
We are now all rooting for his success in uniting and leading the country. The peaceful transition of power is one of the hallmarks of our democracy.
And House Speaker Paul Ryan says Donald Trump's victory turns politics on its head. Ryan says he voted for Trump, but he refused to campaign for him. Ryan now praises the president-elect.
Heard a voice out in this country that no one else heard. He connected in ways with people no one else did. He turned politics on its head. And now, Donald Trump will lead a unified Republican government.
Lauren, Ryan says he wants to remain the Speaker of the House.
Well, we will see if that happens. You know, Republicans who did not support Trump are rallying behind him now. Others did stand with Trump even when the polls didn't look good. Former Pennsylvania Senator and presidential candidate Rick Santorum joins us. Well, you were here last night and you rejoins me. You said last night that there was a hidden vote, and it turned out you were right.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to my friends in Western Pennsylvania, and a guy told me, I think I said this on the show, I said that he waited 2.5 hours at 10 o'clock in the morning at this suburban Pittsburgh, township that's blue collar. And he told me the story of a woman who had a coat on, and she wouldn't say anything to her, and he was trying to engage her in conversation, and he finally said that, he was going to vote for Trump, and she goes, and she pulled it down. She had the
And
Trump.
she had the Trump. See, the hidden vote, the hidden T-shirt.
She wouldn't have
it all
showed it.
comes
Yeah,
together. Right.
there was that vote out there.
That's exactly right. And you know, you have written a book called The Blue Collar Conservative.
Right.
And what you said when you were running is that this election is going to be won by the industrial Midwest, the blue collar vote. And again, you nailed it.
It's where the heartland still is, and that's where Republican messages. The problem we've had in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, is that we've always nominated people who from Wall Street or from the elite, or not someone who went out and talked to them and fought for them.
And really fought for them, and that is what he has promised to do. He tweeted out today that the man and the woman will not be forgotten ever again in this country. Now, tell me about what you think this means for conservative issues, pro-life, religious liberty. Tell us your thoughts on that. You must have been at home going, yeah.
I mean, you talk about God's answering prayer. I mean, I can't tell you the number of prayer calls I was on the last few weeks. People just, novenas that were email novenas all over the place that we were praying. I mean, it's just been, it was an answer to prayer. And nothing, in many cases, nothing short of a miracle. Donald Trump is going to appoint Supreme Court justices, as in other judges, that are going to uphold the Constitution, which means they're not going to create rights that aren't there. They're not going to, change our country based upon the current cultural whims of the day. They're going to talk about originalism. They're going to talk about here's what the founders meant, and if you want to change laws, even on issues like marriage, or if you want abortion, you got to do it through the legislative process, not through the court. And he's going to have the opportunity not just to replace Scalia, which will keep a 5-4 balance,
but probably two others.
There are 3 judges who are older judges on that court, Clarence Thomas being one, who has voiced that he wants to retire. Now he can. Right. And we can and I love Clarence Thomas, he's a good friend, but put a 50-year-old in good health on that court is a good thing.
Good there for 40 years.
And then there's 2 very relatively old Democrats, Ginsburg and Breyer. They probably won't want to leave, but you never know.
You never know. All right, I have a question for you. I
leave.
have to ask before we go. Would you consider joining the Trump administration if asked? If so, in what capacity?
Yeah, I think I haven't been asked. I don't think anybody's been asked yet.
Not yet. Right.
But what I've said is I'll do whatever I can from the outside. I have committed myself to running not for any executive position, but running for Father of the Year and Husband of the Year. And after 2 presidential runs, my family is in need of a lot more dad and husband time and taking care of things at home.
Well, you are the family man.
Yeah, that's what I got to do.
All right. Senator Rick Santorum joining us. Thank you so much for all of your thoughts on this election.
Thank you, and let's keep praying. It needs a lot of prayer.
Yeah. The key battleground state of Pennsylvania last picked a Republican for president in 1988, and now Donald Trump has flipped the Democratic-leaning state. It wasn't the only big Republican victory in the state last night. Solidifying Republican control of the Senate, pro-life Senator Pat Toomey wins re-election in a tough race in Pennsylvania. Early results showed Democrat Katie McGinty ahead, but Toomey ended up winning about 49% of the vote, beating his opponent by more than 103,000 votes. Toomey finally claimed victory after 1:30 this morning.
These are the principles that I am going to pursue over the next 6 years in the Senate. I will do it in a way that respects the opinions of people who disagree with me, and I'll do it in a way that will seek to find consensus and common ground.
Our team was there for Senator Toomey's victory party, where Republicans cheered the results coming in state by state. Jason Calvi is crisscrossing Pennsylvania, and he is reporting tonight from the capital, Harrisburg.
Lauren, the Senate race was called just after 1:15 this morning, the historic win for Donald Trump in the state after 1:30 this morning. And we spoke to some very excited Catholic and Protestant voters outside of the city of Allentown.
And I was like, whoa! Whoa! I can't believe, oh, thank you, Lord. Thank you, thank you. He's going to be great.
For years, I've just thought that, my vote never counted and it always went Democratic. And for Pennsylvania to have been the pivotal state that pushed him over the edge at 3 o'clock in the morning, I was tired, but I couldn't fall asleep.
I am very pro-life, and it just really made me very happy.
those sentiments shared by the majority of Catholics. The exit polls put out and published by CNN show that 52% of all Catholics, this includes Hispanics and white Catholics, went for Donald Trump. 45% for Hillary Clinton. And Lauren, this is very important news. Back in 2008 and 2012, Barack Obama won the total Catholic vote, Hispanic and white, both times.
Well, what do these exit polls reveal about who backed Donald Trump last night?
Well, many different groups, but he is, the exit polls show him soaring with whites without college degrees. And as we've visited around and interviewed people in this state of Pennsylvania, we've heard those stories. The areas where manufacturing used to be key to the economy, where some of the jobs, a lot of the jobs have taken a hit because of the recession. Donald Trump really resonated with those folks. And last night, as you mentioned earlier, he said the forgotten man and woman will no longer be forgotten.
You know, back to that key Senate race, what was the mood when you were there inside Toomey headquarters in the middle of the night?
It was a real nail biter. The first couple hours we were watching the results coming in, and the Democrat, Katie McGinty, was ahead. And then as the night progressed and the morning came, the Republican incumbent, Senator Pat Toomey, had a decisive victory.
Okay, Jason Calvi reporting from Pennsylvania, from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, the capital. And Brian, that race was not the only hotly contested Senate race.
Yes, in fact, Donald Trump managed to break through the blue wall, winning traditionally Democratic states like Wisconsin and Michigan. The presidential election, though, has still not been called in New Hampshire, and that's where Wyatt Goolsbee is again tonight. Wyatt?
Brian, in addition to the presidential election, we're also covering that tight Senate race between the Republican incumbent Kelly Ayotte and the Democratic governor Maggie Hassan. We can tell you that the Governor Hassan has claimed victory, and just now, a little while ago, Kelly Ayotte has conceded defeat. All of this coming this afternoon, but it was by the narrowest of margins. It was 700 votes, and Hassan, that means he was only about a tenth of a point lead against Ayotte. As we have been saying, this is one of the tightest, if not the single tightest Senate race we have ever seen. As far as the presidential race, votes are still being counted at the time of this broadcast. So far, according to the AP, Hillary Clinton has a 1-point edge. And as we continue to watch these results, we can also tell you that our crew has been traveling around New Hampshire and talking with Catholic voters specifically. They've been telling us that the pro-life, voting for pro-life lawmakers has been absolutely critical this election. Church-going Catholics in the town of Nashua, New Hampshire, woke up to a surprise. President-elect Donald Trump.
A miracle. Absolute miracle.
Daniel Hogan says he considered a lot of important issues when voting, but one stood out.
The basic thing is the Supreme Court. The position that is not for 4 years or 8 years, but for life. And they keep packing it with liberals that are opposed to what we believe as Catholics.
Stephen and Elizabeth Hort say they had serious reservations about Hillary Clinton. They voted for Trump.
We just feel that we had to vote our conscience and vote pro-life.
I could never, ever vote for Hillary because of her platform, especially on about abortion and all the lies and deceit and the skullduggery that she carried on.
Maurice Huberdeau went the same way, but he hopes Trump will keep his promises.
He's been all over the fence in the past in terms of his position on abortion, and now that he's doing his campaign, he's offered to nominate pro-life judges for the Supreme Court. So I'm hoping he follows through on that, and I hope that he does work to improve the lives of everybody.
So the pro-life issue was critical for Catholic voters during this specific election. Here in New Hampshire, several other big issues include the opioid epidemic or the heroin epidemic, especially hitting a number of young people, as well as the rising cost of health care. Brian?
All right, it's time to come home, Wyatt. Thank you, Wyatt Goolsbee in New Hampshire. Coming up, people around the world react to Donald Trump's surprise win, and voters make key decisions on issues important to Catholics.
Welcome back to this special edition of News Nightly. I'm Lauren Ashburn.
I'm Brian Patrick. The election is sending shock waves around the world. Wall Street quickly and robustly rebounds today from overnight indications of a sharp dive in stock prices. The initial shock of the completely unexpected Trump victory sent stock futures tumbling overnight, but the Dow pivoted to close up 256 points. The Nasdaq gained 57 points today. People worldwide react to the news of Donald Trump's election as the 45th president of the United States. Clinton supporters gathered in Rome following the election results at an event organized by a group called Democrats Abroad. Some expressing dismay, even crying as results came in, but not everyone was upset.
I'm happy that she lost. I'm not necessarily happy that he won. I know it's a very confusing way to put it, but I see her as a very corrupt figure in U.S. politics. She pretty much embodies most things that I don't like to see in a politician, not even taking into account that I disagree with most policies. So to see her get shut down like this is astounding. I never thought I would see this.
Mary Shovelin is joining us from Rome. Mary, what kind of reaction are you hearing from the Vatican about the election of Donald Trump as the next U.S. president?
We're still awaiting to hear from Pope Francis. Brian, in the past, he sent a message to the Secretary of State to the newly elected president of the U.S. We haven't had that yet today, but we did hear from the Vatican Secretary of State himself in off-the-cuff remarks at a conference today in Rome. He said he wished the new president well, said he was going to keep him in his prayers, and hope that we could all turn our attention to problems throughout the world, a world that is so scourged at the moment by war and violence. When they asked him about the Pope's build a wall his comments about Donald Trump's wall policy, he said, well, it's one thing to run for president, it's another thing to be president, so let's see what newly elected President Trump does.
And how is Italy and the rest of Europe responding to this global political surprise?
Like you say, Brian, a surprise, a shock and awe, if you will. Europe woke up to a big surprise today. But after Brexit, you have to remember where we are here in Europe. We just had Brexit. So after that decision by England to leave the European Union and now the victory of Donald Trump, it has a lot of the governments here in Europe shaking as well. Are we going to see a populist sort of tsunami coming over here as well, where firmly established political governments may be upset over here, and a lot of people are voting throughout the next year, so we may see a tide of change here in Europe. They're a little bit worried about that. We have to remember we're the United States and we will stay united, but the European Union is not, and we've already seen one state break away, so there are some fears for that.
Very interesting perspective, and we appreciate that from you. Mary Shovelin, our Rome producer on EWTN News Nightly. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Brian.
And Lauren, the election also had a big effect on Catholics right here in the U.S.
It's true. In Colorado, a stunning blow to the sanctity of life. People voted for physician-assisted suicide, which allows doctors to provide terminally ill patients with medication to help them die. The Ballot Initiative passed 65 to 35. Colorado joins Oregon, Washington, Vermont, and California in adopting assisted suicide initiatives. California's Proposition 62 is one of 3 referendum losses for those working to abolish the death penalty. Oklahoma and Nebraska voters also rejected attempts to ban capital punishment. Nebraska's 3 bishops say in a joint statement today, "We will continue to call for the repeal of the death penalty when it is not absolutely necessary to protect the public safety." And 4 states legalized personal use of marijuana. Voters in California, Nevada, Massachusetts, and Maine passed initiatives. Arizona did not. Florida, Montana, and North Dakota also passed ballot initiatives, but approving marijuana for medical purposes.
Up next, how Donald Trump's win could bolster the pro-life movement. And lasting legacy, the impact of the election on the Supreme Court. Welcome back to this special edition of EWTN News Nightly. I'm Brian Patrick.
And I'm Lauren Ashburn. We can now call Donald Trump President-elect. With the future of the Supreme Court at stake and the prospect of another pro-abortion president, well, that drove millions of pro-life voters to the polls. With Republicans in the House, Senate, and White House, pro-life leaders focus now on enacting a pro-life agenda. Joining us from Brentwood, Tennessee, is Republican Congresswoman Marsha Blackburn. Thank you so much for joining us. What a
I am
night.
so delighted to be with you. Thank you.
How is this a major turning point for the pro-life movement that you are so involved in on Capitol Hill?
First, we have in President-elect Trump a president who can clearly articulate why he is pro-life. And this is something that he grew to as a part of his political and spiritual journey. It isn't a viewpoint he's taken all of his life. So being able to articulate so clearly is important. Secondly, he is such a proponent of the Hyde Amendment and the language and making certain that no taxpayer funds are spent on abortion. So that is going to help us. You know, the choice was so clear there. Hillary Clinton was very outspoken, and the Democrat platform very precise in saying they wanted to continue federal funding of abortion and end the Hyde Amendment language.
What are you going to do specifically when you get back on Monday or when the next term begins, when Donald Trump is president? What groundwork are you laying, and what do you expect to be the first pro-life decision?
The groundwork that we are laying comes in the form of the final report that will come from our select investigative panel. And your viewers can stay in touch with me at blackburn.house.gov. Secondly, what you will see is a continued push to make certain that abortion funding and entities that provide abortion are considered separately from those entities that provide women's health care services. The third thing that you will see us do is address this issue with the third-party entities, the fetal tissue procurement businesses that are reselling and transferring, trafficking these fetal tissues and organs. And we will have more to say about that as we deliver our final report.
Now, we have just a little bit more time and one more question. Will all of the Supreme Court justices nominated by Donald Trump be pro-life? Is that your understanding?
He has said that he wanted to put pro-life and constitutionally sound judges on the Supreme Court, and I expect that he will do that.
Okay, thank you so much, Representative
Thank
Marsha
you.
Blackburn from Tennessee, joining us via Skype.
Sure, good to be with you. Thank you.
Brian, the Senate and House have many other important issues to deal with.
In fact, the margin is slightly smaller, but Republicans will control both houses of Congress as Donald Trump takes office in January. Frank Cannon, president of American Principles Project, is joining us. House Speaker Paul Ryan today giving Trump the credit for helping to maintain the majority on Capitol Hill. Ryan has been the face of the party for a while. He now has to concede that to the president-elect. Do you think he's feeling a little heat?
Well, as we say in Washington, they've had an interesting relationship. I think that when you have a president-elect, that person sets the priorities for the party. I think Ryan was operating under the assumption that he might be operating with Hillary Clinton as president and that he was going to lead the loyal opposition. So it's been a big adjustment for him in 24 hours.
In the Senate, as slim as that margin is, how important is it that the GOP still controls that seat? Senate.
It's absolutely important. You know, talking about the funding Planned Parenthood, that is done by a process called reconciliation, where you can do it with a simple majority. If you have 51 or 52 seats, which is what it looks like the Republicans will have when the Louisiana election is over, that's enough to be able to pass legislation, particularly in the first stages of a president coming to Washington.
So Mitch McConnell's move to put off the vote on a Supreme Court justice has paid off. Now Donald Trump will get to make that appointment. Will he get a rubber stamp from the Senate?
He won't get a rubber stamp, but I think the Republicans have to take into consideration what the Democrats were threatening to do, which was to go to what they call the nuclear option, to make sure that you are able to get your appointments with just 51 votes. Another consideration for the Senate Democrats is They have 25 seats up in 2018.
Yeah,
so,
years.
So if they are too much in opposition, that can play a role.
The drama continues. Frank Cannon, president of American Principles Project. Thank you, Frank.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for watching. For Lauren Ashburn and the EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Brian Patrick. We leave you tonight with Trump supporters celebrating outside Trump Tower in New York City. Good night. God bless.